So, hello everyone. I wanted to show you a way that we can share a full stack project with the recruiters, or just a way for us to put it on our portfolio so that there aren't many files or GitHub repositories that the person viewing our portfolio must open the links to see our projects. And it even makes it easier for us to make a sample to host our project. So basically, we're going to use a concept of GitHub, of Git submodules and Docker Compose, so that we can create an image of all our project. So what we're trying to do is, for instance, let's use this for an example. I have here a project that has a server and API. It doesn't matter what it does, just what matters is it's in Node.js, and this is the server, and it has an admin front end made with Next.js, and a Max front end for the client, for normal users. So if I wanted to share this project, this full stack project, for someone to run it, he will have to clone all of these projects, and it just not optimal. So what we can do over here is use the Git submodules concept. So we create a repository. So this is a project for the Max Scholarship. So we create a repository, and then we can come over here. Let me just add helpers scripts, just so that we can remember the scripts. So we can do get submodules add. So I don't know exactly why, but I occasionally get this error in my SQL. But adding this, like adding all the environments directly here, which is basically it takes it exactly from this file. So if you guys know why, please comment. But just adding this, it solves that problem, and then we can run our migration. So let's go docker compose up -d, wait for our images to run. Docker yes, docker exec -it bash. Now I'm using Adonis.js, so to run the migration, it's node ace migration run. It's actually because I just tested it, so it is up. So node ace migration rollback, I guess. So yeah, basically, but we have our access to the database, so that's what I'm trying to show. Now we can come over here, 3000 at test.com 123 123 123. A 401 because our user does not exist, so we can register here our user and Jesus a at test.com 123 123 123 123 123 123. Register user is registered, and I forgot the email. I guess it was test.com 123 123 123 123. Yes. So here we have the user, but we don't have any content over here. And here, now notice that I run the migration manually. We don't want the user to do this also. So we have it over here, but we don't have our backend running yet. So let's pause it, or docker compose down. Now let's create our API. So let me create it over here. Max API. So it will use the same concept, build, it will use a context. And now it just points to the Max API, platform API. Restart always. Now just to point to the here we override the MySQL host so that the the API knows that the MySQL host is internal to the Docker. We can even put the image name here, so max MySQL. It will be the host basically. It serves at the same way. We can expose our ports here so that we can test our API, but we don't need so because the only thing that the user will be interested to is to play with the front end. But if we want to, we can. Let's put the environment file over here just because I like to do it and it has more information, right? We can define here that it depends on the MySQL, the max MySQL. So I think here we need to, they are dependent on having the same network. So let me make them just connected and the same network over here. So let me create the network now. Just a bridge so that the backend can the containers, the images can talk one to each other by this bridge over here of network. So with this done, now we should have our backend running also. But there is an important point over here that this depends on the max MySQL depends on this waits for the SQL container. Why is this important? Because it doesn't wait for the SQL image to necessarily have the SQL running and ready. It waits for the SQL image to complete starting. So you might have the SQL image did finish, but the SQL service is not ready yet. So you might try to run your seed, your database seed or migration, but it won't run because the SQL service is offline. Okay, so I will add later a code to check if the SQL server is responding, and then we can continue. Okay, but just let's add docker compose up dash d started created, and now over here I have the API, I have the Redis, the MySQL. I have the front end, the admin. I can come over here. I have my Swagger documentation. So everything nice and ready. And we can use it. We can see the logs of it. Server is running. Everything seems to be ready. We can try a few commands over here actually. So you can run docker exec over here and use it like docker yes. The API is this one, so docker exec dash it, I guess something like this. Bash. Mm. You can just ask ChatGPT. Give me docker and bash script. Something like uh, I forgot the image. Yeah, this is so we can node ace migration run. Let me see if this works. access denied. So it's just that MySQL is so annoying with these errors over here that we need to fix. So it's saying that my user doesn't is not allowed the access. There is some error with my environment variables. I need to check it out, but basically now with one command I have everything running. And let me click over here. Let me just test email.com 123 123 123. So of course so notice that it did make the request to the API. It just had an error because we don't have our migrations. We didn't migrate our tables basically. Get submodules add, and then we can take the link over here of the API and do so. It's get submodule add, and then the link for your repository. So here, hippo link. So now we have over here our max. So this is exactly that repository. So we can even when we commit it over here, we can see that we have the Max Platform API, the server, and the main repository. So let's say add API sub module, get push. So if I come over here now and refresh it, I have over here a reference to this repository over here. So I can get this repository from this project. So we can do the same for our other project. So we can do get submodule add submodule add, and this is the admin, and now we can get the front end, get submodule add, and the front end. So notice that inside this main repository I have, if I change stuff in those repos, I can commit it and push it, and I will change these repositories. So this one just keeps a reference of each one of them. So this one over here, let me commit this, add front end and admin, basically. Get push. So now I have a reference for all of my modules. So let's just add a small README file to help us out. And I have this already, so I have done it already. So basically, a description about the project, and for the person that's going to clone it. So when someone is going to clone our main project, he should do get clone, put this over here, and then add this tag over here, just so that he can get the submodules also with it. But if the person forgets it, he can just get submodules, update in it recursive. So this will update the submodules. Okay, so this is for the README. Now, this already makes it better. So now we don't have to deal with all of this. We can just handle for this project over here. Add README. Sure. Get push. But what else I want to do now is let's check out our Max front end with is just Next.js project. So let me cd in Max front end. I have my Docker running, so Docker PS. I even have an image running, so we can run docker stop for it, but uh, I just stopped it over here. I can even remove it. So now, inside my Maxed front end project, I have a Docker file. So basically, what I'm saying is create a Docker image with node 18 and then copy my working this directory over here to the app directory. No, the copy is over here. Here is just creating the working directory, and then we're copying the package JSON, and then we are installing the node modules and copying our code, and then we run npm run build and npm start. So we can actually run this image basically by, let me just get the command over here from our friend ChatGPT. So build, yeah, that is docker build dash t max front dot. So here we're building our image. So we're just creating the image. And while it's creating this, we can get this command over here. Docker run, okay. Nice, nice, nice. So just let's wait for it to end. Okay, so it's ready. Now we can do docker run dash d. So just we don't occupy our terminal, and dash port, and then we're going to map the 3000 to 3000, and it's maxed front end. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Run it, and this is our tag. So docker ps. Now we can come over here, localhost 3000, and we have our image running. But it's not nice if the person needs to run each image, so we're going to create a docker compose over here, a docker compose.yaml file, which will run all of our projects together. So docker stop so now let's create our docker compose. So for the docker compose, we need just to a brief understanding of our three projects over here. So the admin and front end, they're both a Next.js project, and they have a Docker file inside them which does the same thing. It's the same code, but the admin runs on port 3005. We create the dependencies, we run npm run build after copying our code, and then we run the script. Okay, so the front end and back end, it's basically a simple Next.js React project, and the backend now, the backend is more interesting. The backend, even though it has a Docker Compose inside it, but ignore this for a while. It has a Docker file over here. So basically, the backend is going to be exposed. We don't even need this exposed because we have a Docker Compose, so we don't need to expose it over here. But our backend, it has the backend, a Redis instance. It uses Redis. It uses a MySQL database. So we need those services. So let's start with version 3.3.8. Let's define our services. Now, before I continue with this, I have a .in files, for instance. Now, even though my Docker image for this front end worked, remember I didn't. It wouldn't call the API correctly because this .in file, the environment variables, were not initted. So I have all the environment variables for local development in .in.example. So if we want to run them, we can, let me just add this script over here, copy environment files. So we can copy the inside the max admin inv.example, we can create inside the max admin the .in files. So notice over here in the max admin we don't have the .inv. If we run this, my computer just slowed down for a second. So if I run this, it copied this info to the .in file. So I can do this for the other files. Okay, now I have my environment variables. Now I can create my Redis image. So let's call it maxed Redis. Image will be Redis Alpine. Restart always. Now I can define the in file, which is going to be inside of maxed platform API .env. So this is just telling him what the environment variables for this Redis instance is inside this folder over here in the .env file, which here we have this Redis connection, Redis hosts, which you would put in your Docker Compose over here at .env. So you can define them if you want, like environments, and put like Redis, put these variables over here. Okay? So now we can expose our ports. So this is the default port. And we can create the MySQL connection. Maxed MySQL. Image is going to be a MySQL. Image is a MySQL 8.0. Restart always. In file is going to be the same. Be careful with the indentations. Here, just because it's MySQL and I don't have the root password in my in file over here, let me add a few environments over here, just the MySQL. Map the port. Now, you don't need actually to expose the Redis and MySQL ports because they're getting called locally, right? Inside the Docker container. But I'm just exposing it so if you want to test it in your terminal, we can add a volumes so that we don't lose our database. So here we add the volumes. And we can build the front ends now. So max front, which is going to be build, which uses a context. So here we're going to use that Docker file we created, admin, restart always. And for our the restart is over here. For the ports, we're going to map with 300. And for the admin, it's the same, but the ports are different, and and it must be maxed admin files. Ah, here it's front end. Okay. So if I run this now, I will have everything but my backend running. So let's just check this docker compose up-d. So over here, I have an instance for my SQL database, an instance for my admin. So I actually can visit it, and the front end. But now, of course, so what what we want to do now is add the script command for our to so that we can run our migration. So I added here in our API to run the migration. But if you try this, you will notice that you will get an error. And why is that? Because the MySQL service have will not start yet. So this will throw. Okay? We can actually docker compose up, and hopefully let's even see the commands over here. So here he's starting the MySQL and enumDB initialization, connection error, connection error, connection error, server started. Ah, it actually did run the migration. So it did run the migration, but what you can do, you can add this code over here. This basically makes a timeout in the MySQL container that will ping the MySQL and will keep checking on it. So to know if the service of the MySQL is responding. Okay, and then since the API depends on it, it will wait for the max MySQL image to boot. Okay, so interesting. I need to check why this did run, even though it kept on retrying the connection. Maybe it's something inside the code base. But yeah, now basically, if someone gets our repository and run the docker compose after running the command to to get those .in files, he will have uh, he will have our project running, and you can even add it to Docker Hub. You can push this image to Docker Hub. Command to push image to Docker Hub. Docker tag your name. So you can, let's even do this. Docker ps. Ah, what if is a Docker compose? I don't even need it to run, right? Uh, Docker compose push. What happens when I do this? So does this create actually? Interesting. Let me check over here. Sign in. Let me just sign in over here. So we can also do like cd to max front end front. Ah, we're already in this directory. So we can do docker build, and let me try to remember. Docker build dash G. So it's Docker build, yeah. Docker build dash T. So John 13 and then max front. Ah, dot in this directory. So now we built this Docker file, and then we can Docker push junk 13 max front, and we are pushing it to Docker Hub. So over here it's going to appear. I already did the push for the admin. So once it finishes, this was the admin running. We can do for the API. So cd max platform docker build dash t code 13 max API dot docker push code 13 max API. And here in our Docker Compose, we can just say image is going to be junk 13 max API, and here it's going to be image junk 13 max front. Here we can say image junk 13 max admin. And we can now we have our images over here in our Docker Hub. I think we're missing just the API, the push for the API. Layer already exists. Unknown blob, unknown to registry. Docker build junk 13 max API. Let me see. Error not found. Docker max API. No such container. Build dash t dot. It exists. Pushing. So yeah, now we have all our images here, and we can Docker compose. Actually, it's not here. Docker compose up dash d. So now it's going to take the image from our Docker Hub, which is already here. And yeah, that's what I wanted to show you guys for now.